Good morning. Welcome to the 3 p.m. games. My name is Sheila Johnston. I'm the Association Manager for the Third Party Marketers Association. I have the pleasure of introducing our board member, Frank Menard.
Wow, jazzy video.
Jeez.
Yeah, that was
Good,
cool.
good.
Speaking
Good,
of branding. Wow.
I can't hear it.
I
There's
can't
no
hear it
noise.
either, but you're looking very, very dapper.
Well-respected group of industry veterans.
Let me restart that. Here we go.
Hello, I'm Frank Menard, Managing Partner of XT Capital Partners, which is indeed a third-party marketing firm, and we are celebrating our 20th year in the business this year. I'm privileged to serve on the board of directors of the Third Party Marketers Association. This well-known and well-respected group of industry veterans has an amazing record of success in introducing investment management firms and their unique products to a wide variety of asset allocators and intermediaries all over the world. The 3 p.m. members are very loyal to the association and to other members who they have historically helped in many ways. Together, we all interact, exchange useful information, share business challenges and new business opportunities while ensuring the growth of our own business in our own various target markets.
Frank, that was awesome. So we're going to change it up. I'm going to ask Frank questions.
What?
So just, last minute
Wait.
change up there.
First, however, good morning and welcome everyone. It is now my privilege and honor to introduce our speaker for today's event entitled Brand Strategies. So please join me in welcoming Stacy Havener, who is founder and CEO of Havener Capital Partners. It's a growth platform boutiques. Stacy and I are longtime friends and former colleagues on the 3 p.m. board. Stacy is not a typical marketer. She is an English major who loves poetry and rap music. Please join me in welcoming Stacy Havener.
Frank, thank you so much. I feel like it's old home week here. I'm just honored to be a part of this. I love the whole concept of 3 p.m. games, and it's just great to be back with friends. So I hope we're gonna have fun today. We're talking about branding, everyone's favorite topic. And I thought maybe the way I want this to be helpful for you. I want it to be challenging, really make you think differently. And I also want you to walk away with some practical things that you can do if you're so inspired to work on your brand. So please think of questions. I don't really know how GoToWebinar works. I was saying to Sheila, I'm like a rookie at this platform, but if there's a way to ask questions, type them in. We're gonna leave 15 minutes for questions at the end, and I'm super excited about that part. But I thought maybe to kind of get things going, we would talk about some common myths, some of the things people say to us when they join the platform here at Havener, and we tell them, okay, we're going to do a lot with marketing and branding and storytelling and authenticity, and then I can see them like sweating. I thought we'd go through some of those issues in case those are things you're thinking about too. So Sheila, if you jump to the next slide, please. These are the myths that we're going to talk about. I'm just going to leave them up here. And if any of these resonate with you, don't worry. We're going to break these down. But before we talk about the myths, let's spend a second on what is a brand. Okay, because I think that's part of it, right? I mean, branding isn't necessarily marketing. It's a component of marketing, but what is a brand? And I think the old school way of thinking about a brand, really, I mean, when you say, oh yeah, they have a great brand, like let's take Apple, what do you think about? Their logo? Like it's recognizable, right? Or if you're driving down the street and you see the golden arches, you know exactly what type of food you're going to be getting at that establishment. So the old way of thinking about a brand has a lot of connotations of big companies, being recognizable, and a mark, right? Like a logo. And a brand is so much more than that, especially now. Really, the way that branding has evolved, it's not just your look and feel, it's who you are. It's your personality. It's your values. It's the experience a client gets in working with you. And it's not about being recognizable as much as it's about being relatable. Okay? Relatable. And that's important whether you're a big company or a small company, right? Your brand is kind of what people say about you when you're not in the room. Your brand is a like picture you waving a flag saying people like this. It has to compel people to want to be a part of what you're building. But at the same time, and we're going to talk about this, in order for that attraction to occur, it also has to repel. And that's scary. So don't stay with me. We're going to talk about that. But I hope that sort of gives you a new way of thinking about branding. It's not just your logo or your color scheme or your fonts. It is the experience of who you are as a company or as a person. And really, if all things are equal, it is what gets a client or an investor to pick your firm over someone else. Okay, so let's have that as the backdrop. So 5 myths, and I made these specific to our industry, especially number 1 here. You know, when we talk with managers about storytelling, authenticity, even marketing sometimes, they're like, yeah, that doesn't really matter. I don't know if you've had this conversation with portfolio managers, maybe you have, but there's this idea that performance matters most. Performance matters, but I think what we've seen is that performance is now table stakes. Like you don't even get invited to the party unless you have the performance to back up, you know, who you are and the fact that you're good at what you do. It's not the be all end all, it's part of it. It's the ante to sit at the table. And no one is going to make a decision to invest with you based on performance or statistics, especially if you're a boutique. And I think if you're a big firm, a lot of things get blended, right? It's much easier if you're a big asset management company to get investors to say, yeah, I'm going to put money with BlackRock. Not going to get fired for doing that. But with boutiques, especially, all of this branding stuff becomes really important because it's a way for you to level the playing field and fight with thought leadership and people relationships, okay? So there was a study, I don't know if any of you saw it, the Kaya Association, so this is coming more from the alternative side, but I know lots of 3PMs focus on the alt space. Kaya did a study, it was super interesting. They surveyed investors, institutional investors of all types around the world, and they asked managers the same question, which was, what is the most important thing? Quantitative due diligence or qualitative due diligence? What do you think came back? Well, the investor said qualitative is as important, if not more important, than quantitative. Maybe that doesn't surprise you because we all know that. But here's where it was like, oh, of course, this makes sense. The managers thought quantitative was far and away the most important thing that investors cared about. And that's the problem. Because the manager goes in thinking that the investor cares about numbers and stats, and the investors coming to the meeting not really caring about that, wanting to understand people, process. If you're the founder and a portfolio manager, why did you start your firm? Why did you leave whatever big firm you were at and break away and start this company? Who are you as a person? What do you believe in? What are you doing differently than where you were? Those stories establish relationship and connection and trust, and that is as important as all the Greeks and the stats and the numbers and the performance. So branding is built into that. Storytelling is part of branding. Who you are as a company, who you are as a founder, that matters. Okay, so that's myth number one. Myth number two, bigger is better, more is more. Okay, so maybe you've had this conversation with portfolio manager. You say, oh, see what, you've got this strategy, it's great. Who's it for, right? Who's the target market? And they say, everyone. Everyone should have this in their portfolio. Some of them even say, this should be the bulk of the investor's portfolio, at which point you're like pulling your hair out of your hand. This mentality of trying to be something to everyone, everything to everyone, means that you actually aren't anything to anybody at all, because you've lost the specificity. There's a saying I think Seth Godin talks about, which is, being a wandering generality versus a meaningful specific. Think about that. An investment strategy isn't designed for everyone on the planet with money. Okay, that's not a target market. So what work can you do to niche down? And this applies to us as 3PMs too, by the way. So think about it. Your manager, you want them to focus on a niche, some specific group that they've created this product to help solve a problem. And you, as a third-party marketer, might also want to think about, what's your niche? Are you a specialist in a certain strategy type? Are you a specialist in a certain investor type, an allocator type? Are you a specialist in a geography? Are there things that you're willing to say no to? Are there clients that you'll say no to? If the answer is no, I say yes to everyone who has a check, you have not identified a niche. You are not leaning into a unique ability or solving a specific problem for a specific target market. And this is important because, again, I'd mentioned that attract and repel. Your tribe, in order for them to say, oh, yes, like that's who I am, you need to be talking to them specifically. And so much of the marketing and branding that we see out there is just to everyone. It's bland. It's not saying something powerful enough that someone says, that is not for me. Okay, so I'll give you an example of how you can do this. If you wanted to practice this, this is a really important part of getting your branding started or refined. If you said, I'm going to look at my top clients, and depending on if you're doing this with a manager or for yourself, whatever, it could be 10 clients, 10 investors for a manager, but maybe for you as a 3PM, just pick like your top handful of clients. And best clients doesn't mean the one that writes the biggest check. It's the one where it works, what you're doing is working the best. The relationship is great. Yes, there is, profitability, of course, but like the whole experience with that client. And then take those clients and start looking for commonalities. Could be demographic commonalities or psychographics. What problem, are you solving? Why did they pick you? and look for patterns so that you can start identifying what your niche is. Okay, riches are in the niches. Myth number 2, bigger is not necessarily better and more is not always more. Okay, myth 3, my pitch is perfect. Have you heard this one? They're like, oh no, thank you. You want to help me with my messaging? I'm all set. I just need more meetings. And you're like, are you winning the meetings you're in? And they say, no, no, that's why I need more. And you're like, why? So you can lose more? Okay, this is not finding out what works and repeating. This is a manager thinking that I go into a meeting and pitch to an investor, and if I'm not winning enough or at all, that just means I need to swing more times. Okay, let's break this one down. There's 2 potential things that are happening in this myth about pitching. The first is that the manager or us, again, all of this applies to us as 3 PMs as well, is that the manager or us, that we are saying the wrong thing. That's possible, right? Or we might be saying the right thing, but we're saying it to the wrong person. And that ties back up to the niche. So the odds are it's probably a little bit of both. And I think the biggest issue here, and this is like the 80s called and want their pitch back, because the old way of selling was for sure pitching. Give me a prospect, put him in a chair in front of me. How much time do I have? And I'm going to just throw up on them. Every elevator, I'm going to just take a presentation and like just jam it and talk. And at the end of it, I stop and say, you know, what do you think? Basically. And that's dead. Okay. Pitching is not where it's at. You sell by serving. And I think one of the problems with a pitch is, who's the hero of a pitch? I'm waiting like you're going to answer me, but you can't. But the hero, when you go in a pitch mentality, the hero is you. You go in and you talk for 30 minutes about how great you are, how great your performance is, how great your strategy is. It's all about you. And it's not actually about you, because you aren't the hero of this conversation. You're the guide. The investor is the hero. You are the guide. The investor is Katniss and you're Haymitch, if you watched Hunger Games. The investor is Luke Skywalker and you're Yoda. Take whatever movie you want. There's always a hero and a guide. You're the guide. So instead of pitching about you, what you need to change the mindset around is, how are you helping that hero get where they want to go? That investor is trying to solve a problem or harness an opportunity, and they are looking for a guide to get them there. That's the conversation, not a presentation that works, okay? Presentation and pitching is the old way. Conversation and understanding where the investor is coming from is the new way, and your job is to see if you can help them get where they're trying to go. So I hope that helps on the pitch myth. Let's go to myth number 4. I was gonna write social media is a waste of time, but I decided that I would change it to LinkedIn is a waste of time, because I do think they're not social media, not all social media is created equally here. I was down at the beach this morning doing my beach walk and talk video, which I do on LinkedIn. And I was reflecting on a past 3 PM conference where I think there was someone with me, a panel about video. And you guys didn't throw tomatoes at me, but it was close. It was like, I suggested that, you know, we should think about video as a way to build brand and lean into authenticity and connect. And it was like, that was, you know, it was just not ready, right? Compliance, all the reasons. Social media kind of feels like that a little bit. So I hope you'll hear me out. Let's deal with the compliance thing, and we can certainly talk about this in Q&A. You can post on social media. You can. Your managers can and you can. Do you need a compliance infrastructure around it? 100%. But that doesn't mean you can't do it. So let's just, whether you choose to do it or not is a different thing. So is it a waste of time? No. If you do it right and you're committed to it and you're going to the place where your target market is hanging out. So Instagram, probably not a good use of time for an asset manager. LinkedIn, definitely a good use of time for an asset manager. Twitter, I mean, some managers, Cliff Asness, the AQR, crushes it on Twitter. There are a lot of managers from big companies that run their own Twitter, and that causes a lot of concern for the marketing team, right? Because these people are just like ripping like whatever, tweeting whatever the hell they want, and the marketing people are like, oh my God. But that's the point. The point of social media is to connect with other people in a real way. I can share with you personally, for me, what that journey has been like, and I will tell you, I have been blown away by the results of being on LinkedIn. And I think what's powerful on LinkedIn, not that your company shouldn't have a LinkedIn presence, it can, but the real magic of LinkedIn is what happens between people. Two people, a group of people, but person to person. That's where connection happens. And I think there's a myth baked in on LinkedIn that like no one real or decision makers don't hang out on LinkedIn. Are you serious? You don't, I mean, you would be floored if I told you the people that I have connected with on LinkedIn who are founders of companies or decision makers at huge investment firms, that if I had tried another angle to connect with them, calling them or emailing them, it never would have happened. Instead, we became friends on LinkedIn. We can talk a lot more about, if that's something you want to explore, I want to spend some time on that in questions. I'm watching the clock here. But I will tell you that it is a commitment, okay? You can't just go on LinkedIn, post and ghost. Here's a post, I'm out. That's not building a connection. That's not how you would be in real life. If you wanted to be friends with someone, that's not how you would act. So you can't act that way on social media either. It is about posting, but it's also about connecting and commenting on other people's posts. And so if you want like a practical thing you could do here, I would try, if you want, go on LinkedIn, find some friends, you know, prospects or investors that you've worked with, see if they have a presence on LinkedIn, see if they're active, and start out by just liking their posts or commenting. Or you don't have to put yourself out there yet if you're not ready. You can just engage with other people's content. And as a content creator, I will tell you, the people who support you, you have no idea how much you love them as a creator, because it is terrifying to be vulnerable and authentic at all, and definitely on social media. So when you see someone comment or like your post, you like, that's amazing. That feeling, and that's why the connection is so powerful on social, because everyone is putting themselves out there and feeling very vulnerable about the whole thing. So please, if you have questions about LinkedIn, let's definitely talk more about that. And I think this whole authenticity conversation directly ties to LinkedIn. This is myth number 5, which is authenticity is not professional. Okay, this is a good one. When we have conversations with managers and we talk about authenticity and we try to tell them like, this is something we want you to embrace, that this also is met with a very scared face, or one of these faces, like just this isn't in their wheelhouse. Let's define authenticity for a second. So authenticity is, this is a Brene Brown definition of it. Authenticity is the daily practice of being who you are, not who you think you are supposed to be. Think about that. how many of us really ever show our true, authentic selves? We don't. This industry especially has done a great job, bad job, of saying everybody needs to wear the blue suit and the red tie, have the right, this is the bag you carry, these are the shoes, the watch, this is how you talk, these are the words you use, this is the pretend golf swing you use when you're at a conference. That's it. Be that. And again, that's the old way. The reality is we are more than our 9 to 5. Okay? As people, we are more than our 9 to 5. That doesn't mean that we have to share everything in our lives in order to be authentic. You don't. You don't have to share personal things. You have to share family things. You don't have to share any of the stuff you don't want to share. What it means is if you go onto social or you decide you want to build a personal brand, if you want to give your business a face and a heart and a soul, which I highly recommend, you can't just talk about raising money. That's boring. If you have a manager and they want to do social media and the only thing they ever talk about is equities, it's like, yeah, like it's just boring. The magic happens when you put things around that. So at the center of your sort of content or authenticity platform, sure, what do you want to be known for? And maybe that is, the thing that you do that you get paid for, your profession. That's fine. But around it, challenge yourself to put something interesting. Like Frank shared at the beginning, I love rap music. That seems like an odd thing to talk about when you're raising money. But as it turns out, lots of other investors like rap music. And sometimes when I drop a lyric from a rap song into a post, the people who like rap see it and go, oh, got it. They do the next lyric, whatever it is. So I'm not just good at raising money. I'm good at raising money, and I like rap, and I like tequila, and I played soccer and poetry, whatever. And all the ands, the slashes, that's what makes you different and unique. And you get to pick what you share. But I don't think this new reality of authenticity and personal branding, it's not built just on your job. And if that's all you talk about, you're missing an opportunity to connect with people in a real way. And that's scary, and I'm happy to talk about that more as well. I have a tool workbook thing that I want to talk about, and maybe this gives you a chance to start playing with some pillars that you could lean into on content or authenticity as a practical takeaway there. So those are the 5 myths. Let me just recap some of the action items for you. So on performance matters most, we talked about that stat from Kaya. This is where you can really work on storytelling. And if you want to pick one story to practice, I would do your founder story. And this can be for you as a marketer or your manager. Have the founder, your backstory. How did you get where you are? What was your journey? Why are you here doing what you're doing? And why are you the guide that hero should pick, right? So it's sort of this, like, if they were to make a movie about you, the backstory captures that movie. Bigger is better, more is more. That's the niche. So that's looking at your clients, your best clients, and looking for commonalities to start building that target market. My pitch is perfect. I just need more meetings. That's the one where really you're the guide, not the hero. So this is not a pitch. What you need to practice here is, what's the problem you're solving for that target market that you've worked on? Okay, so what's the problem you're solving? LinkedIn is a waste of time. If you want to practice some LinkedIn stuff, I would go on LinkedIn and just engage or like or comment on other people's posts as a starting point. And then authenticity is not professional. I have this signature content pillar workbook on my Stacy Havener website, and that's a way for you to start. Yes, put what you want to be known for in the middle, but around that, start layering in some things that are unique and challenge yourself to make one of them, at least one of them, something personal. And so Sheila, with that, I'm gonna have you, if you could, please go to the next slide just for some contact info. My personal brand website, the person who's my brand manager, that is stacyhavener.com. That's where the signature content workbook is. But the best place to connect with me is certainly LinkedIn. That's my platform of choice. And with that, I'm going to pause. 10:30. Frank, you want to help me with some questions?
Stacy, that was great. I didn't know there are that many myths in our industry, but they're all very they're all very interesting, and you did provide great thoughts around those.
Thanks.
We can open it up to the floor. I mean, I do have some questions, but we can open it up to the floor if there are people that would like to ask Stacy about her presentation.
Hi, Frank.
Anybody out there?
We do have a question from Ken Rogers. He asks, for LinkedIn, do you use a consultant or coach to help you set agenda and create the content?
Hi, Ken. Thank you. That's a great question. So I do not. I create my own content, but that doesn't mean that's the best choice for everybody. I did use a coach early on kind of getting set up on LinkedIn. And that was super helpful because the platform had, just like, how do you write your profile? Those types of things. I did have someone help with that. As far as the content itself, because I love writing, that's something that's fun for me. I think if that wasn't my unique ability and I wanted help with it, there's a lot of free tools you can use that just kind of help you with a content calendar. And if you go over, and I'll send you the link to this, but that signature content, that pillars piece is great to come up with what the topics are. And then, there are ways that you can break, like if we did this video, for instance, you could transcribe this video, that could be content. You could break it into little posts. Now you've got even more content. So I do it myself, but there are people that can help you. And I think there's also a lot of free tools out there that can help you organize a content calendar and sort of what to write about.
Are there other questions?
Not at this time, Frank. Floor is yours.
Okay, I have one. What is the normal, if there is a normal, but what is the normal or usual amount of time it takes to create a recognizable brand
And
to have some real impact? What is the normal length of time?
I mean, so I think it's a really good question. If you do the niche work, okay, so if you spend the time to really understand who you're serving and identify that group, and then going back to Ken's question, now you're creating content that is specific to that group and you have a way of getting that content out there. So let's say you've got all these like bases put into place. I spent 6 months on LinkedIn where I didn't ask for anything. I didn't say like, we do this or we do that. There was like no selling at all. All I did for 6 months was just help. Frequently asked questions. That's another great place, Ken, that you can get some content ideas. Just answering things, trying to be helpful, and easily within 3 months, if not shorter time frame, I had very high quality prospects reaching out to me in my inbox in LinkedIn asking for meetings. Like, it was above and beyond. I mean, we all know we get a lot of managers that contact us as 3PMs. The quality of the prospects was astronomically better from the branding work because I had done all the things, got specific on the niche, was speaking to the exact problems we solve, and people see themselves in that. So it can happen fast, but I would give yourself a good 6 months commitment time to letting it work.
One other question. I mean, we're really talking about 3 brands. I mean, your personal brand,
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about the brand of your 3PM company,
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about the investment manager's brand.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
there are three sort of different brands. They're all interrelated, but how do you prioritize that, or do you try to do all three at the same time, or what's your preference?
Yes, great question. So I think if you look at, like, I might have done a post on this at one point, or a blog, but if you looked at Microsoft and Bill Gates, and then you looked at Apple and what's his name, Tim, I'm not an Apple user, but Tim, whatever the CEO of Apple is, whatever his name is, and you looked at their followings, the difference between the number of followers at the company level and the personal level is incredibly skewed to the person.
Right.
Okay. And the reason for that, if you think about it, what the content that comes out of a corporate brand is kind of lame, right? It's like party line, it just sort of feels a little boring. And so it's not that engaging. It's important to have it because your true fans will follow it, and they'll interact with it, etc. But where you're really going to see the exponential impact of branding, in my opinion, is when you put a face on the brand. And that's whether it's your company as a 3PM or your manager, right? And we've all probably seen that magic happen in meetings. When you bring a manager, portfolio manager, founder into a meeting with an investor, you can see that connection happen between people. And that's easier to recreate online with a personal brand than it is with a company brand.
Is there any nuance between creating a brand for the asset allocators and different from the intermediaries? Assuming that most of the 3PMs work with intermediaries, be they the classic consultants or whatever, is there a special way that you deal with the intermediaries that's different from the asset allocators?
But do you mean allocators versus managers?
Allocators versus the intermediaries, like the consultants that are between.
So just nuance between the
Yeah,
different
exactly.
types of investors?
Yeah.
No, I would say there's not really a difference there. They all, if you think about it, like when we do target market work for our managers, we sometimes try to bifurcate that investor base, like, oh, these, RIAs are over here and family offices, and institutions and consultants are over here. The real nuance on that for me is not so much the content or the branding, it's the adoption curve. So if you work with boutiques, a consultant, like if it's a breakaway manager, I can speak for us, like if it's a breakaway manager, a consultant isn't going to take a flyer on that. That's just not in their wheelhouse, where an RIA and family office or an early adopter investor would. So when we go back to, like, I need more meetings, that myth, if you're pitching a breakaway manager to Callan, it's probably not going to resonate as much because Callan's not ready for that type of a manager yet. So I think it's more nuanced on the adoption curve, Frank, but not necessarily on the content.
Right. Okay. I should stop asking questions and let the participants ask some. Does anybody have a question?
Hi, Frank. No additional questions at this time, and you're on a roll. Feel free to keep on going.
Yeah, these are great questions. I can't believe you guys don't have any questions. Come on, that is not true.
I know. I've got all these questions.
Maybe,
One more. Does personal branding mean you have to share any of your personal information or your personal life? Or can you make it much more?
Yeah, that's a great question. You don't have to. You don't have to. And that signature content workbook that I talked about walks you through that a little bit. You could have, so let's say, for instance, think about the things you're passionate about in your life. So Frank, for instance, we know you love your dogs. We know you love a nice bottle of wine. So you might
In that order, by the way.
What'd you say?
In that order.
In that order, exactly.
Right.
So
Awesome.
you might have, like, you could have one of your pillars could be hobbies. And you could have dogs, and you could have wine, and you could have, you know, Santa Fe or whatever, like things that you're passionate about in your personal life. And you just share a little bit. You don't have to share all of it. You don't have to post your dogs every day.
Right.
But maybe, you know, you find a relatable story in what it's like, you know, having dogs and having employees. I don't know. I mean, sometimes it feels like a circus. It could, maybe there's a connection point there. Maybe there's some way of tying in or just sharing your favorite bottle of wine, like your go-to wine right now. Because guess what? There are other people in the world and in our industry that like wine. There are lots of people who like dogs.
Right.
So you don't have to share everything. You can try to make it relatable or tie it back if you want, but you don't have to do that either. You can just share something that's about you as a person.
Do you have a way of actually demonstrating how branding has impact Havener Capital? Can you actually come up with examples of how it has really helped you?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I can tell you that both the number of, so I won't say I won't say number of leads, because I know so many of us as marketers are like, I could do with less managers reaching out to me, because, you know, a lot of it isn't a good fit. So let's take numbers aside, although the quantity of leads has gone up significantly. The quality of the leads has been incredible. So we've had multiple, so again, for us, we at Havener, we're targeting investment boutiques, and specifically we like breakaway managers. And when we talk about that, you know what happens? I get a call from the park from a portfolio manager who's about to leave from one of the best value shops out there. And he's like, I'm thinking of leaving, and I wanted to talk to you about this journey before it's even done. So it's when you're speaking to, so that wouldn't work if I wasn't specific about who we're serving, right? That person wouldn't have known to call if I wasn't specific about talking, you know, how we help breakaway managers. So the quality has been incredible.
Frank, we do have 2 questions from the audience, if you don't mind me popping in. So the first 2 questions come from Darian Gould. It's a 2-part question. Do you feel that hard copy materials are still relevant for branding? And secondly, for a manager client, is there any way you can define brand success aside from meetings achieved?
Yes, great questions. Okay. Hi, Darian. Great to hear from you. Print material definitely is still important. So we call that traditional marketing versus digital or inbound marketing, and that is still a really important part of your brand. And you know, we talked early on about like logos and fonts and that stuff. That still matters. So what I didn't mean to say is like that doesn't matter anymore, because it does. You want to have a look and feel. You want to have a vibe that's communicated through your marketing materials. That is part of your brand, right? So for us, where we're really, you know, leaning into rock star, rebel, you can see the imagery, you can see the black and kind of the gold, like edgy, different. So all of that still matters. And to be honest with you, Darian, we've gone so far in the other direction towards digital that hard copy stuff, even mailers and things, actually is kind of like, you know, unique again, because no one's really doing it. So yes, traditional materials still have a place. And then the second question was for managers, how can you show them that branding works? You know, that's such a great question. And we have a capital raising part of our business, a sales part, and then we have a marketing arm as well, where we're using our system on behalf of managers who have their own sales team. And a couple of those boutiques, they're multi-billion-dollar shops, a lot of institutional investors, what they've shared with us, excuse me, is their investors, their current investors, have sent them notes saying, I love your content. I love your blogs. I just shared this blog with, 20 people in our company. So the investor relations component, where we all kind of think of like new prospects, new leads, there's a really strong correlation on the investor relations side for branding and content as well. So I hope that gives you a different way of thinking about it.
Well, we seem to be moving into overtime, but I don't know.
I'm fine. There's a couple more
You have
questions.
it?
Let's do it.
Sheila, are there more questions?
We have one last question. What type of compliance is needed for your posts?
So I would recommend, first of all, if you have a compliance person, obviously talk to the compliance team that you're working with, but also this is a place where we outsource compliance around social media. And gosh, what is the name of the group? Global Relay. I know there's some people in 3PM that remember Global Relay. I feel like they sponsored a conference with us years ago. We use Global Relay as kind of the backbone of the compliance infrastructure around social media. So obviously make sure you understand the culture of compliance that you're operating within, and that would come from your compliance officer or a lawyer if you're your own compliance officer. And then Global Relay has been our vendor of choice to help us manage that.
And that is it for questions from the audience.
All right. Well, I think the time has come to thank you, Stacy, so much for your insightful view as to how we could all do our job a lot better in special ways. And obviously, you're extraordinarily successful, so it's working for you. And again, thank you so much, and look forward to seeing and hearing and learning more about what you're doing.
Thank you, Frank. It's been awesome to just be a part of this again and to reconnect with you. And please, if you have any questions or you think of anything that relates to branding and you want to explore it more, don't hesitate to reach out. You can jump over to my stacyhavener.com website, or if you can't find something that I've talked about, just let me know. I'm here for you. I am cheering for you, and high five.
Thank you
Thanks,
so much.
Frank. All right,
Thank
talk
you.
soon, everybody. Thank you again.